Well, good day. So we've recently seen a trailer for Spider-Man No Way Home featuring Doctor Strange. So let's talk about one of the first times these guys teamed up in the 90s, and we'll go from there. So alright, let's go. So this episode is situated in the middle of a bigger story arc, so some things might seem kind of weird, but I'll break it down so it's just pretty good for one episode. Alright, so first off, Peter Parker is lamenting the fact that Mary Jane's been missing for some time, and part of the blame in her disappearance has been laid upon him. So he's feeling all horrible. He figured he'd swing around town to get his mind off things, but all of a sudden, he sees this gaggle of ninjas just flying around, which normally would be pretty peculiar, but within this series, man, that's just another day in New York. Anywho, he decides to follow them, and they wind up at this house called the Sanctum Sanctorium. These flying ninjas bust in there and start wreaking havoc. One of the inhabitants of the house, named Wong, starts fighting back, and Spidey figures, yeah, I might as well help this guy. Flying ninjas seem like jerks. Turns out these ninjas want this magic wand called the Wand of Watum. So as Spidey is wrestling with one of these ninjas, he takes one of their masks off, and it turns out this flying ninja is Mary Jane. She can somehow fly, she's got super strength, and she has this laser eye vision. Like, what the hell is going on, right? So the other inhabitant of the house, named Doctor Strange, pops in, he fights off the ninjas, the day is partially saved, right? Spider-Man follows Mary Jane and her gaggle of flying friends to a house known as the Center of Reunification, but he can't make his way in because of some magic spell, so he's like, screw this, man, I'm out. So there are a bunch of people in that ninja gang from the Center of Unification who are under the spell of this powerful sorcerer named Baron Mordo. He's working for some powerful villain in a different dimension named Dormammu. So Dormy wants to get in our dimension to wreak havoc, but he needs that Wand of Watum to get in here. Henceforth, the attack earlier. So on another day, Peter Parker sneaks into the center, saying he wants to join, but he's really there to try to get Mary Jane out. But unfortunately, the other ninjas, who are now dressed as monks, see through his ruse and bring him to Baron Mordo. And Mordo brainwashes Spider-Man. So now he's part of the flying monk crew. With his Spidey gear, they successfully get the Wand of Watum, but Doctor Strange is able to break Spidey out of the brainwashing magic spell. So Doctor Strange, Wong, and Spider-Man team up to get the Wand of Watum back to go to the Center of Reunification. Of course, with Doctor Strange's magic, they can get in there pretty easily, and there's just battles all around, right? There's a magic battle, fist fight battles. Spidey even jumps into the dimensional rift where Dormammu is. For some reason, I don't know really what he thought he was gonna do. He's totally losing against Dormammu, so Doctor Strange has to go in there and save him. They're free, yay, so the day's saved, right? Nope, because Dormammu goes all old school King Kong and grabs Mary Jane and brings her into his dimension, but she's able to resist his evil spells and she breaks out of there, and with the Wand of Watum, Doctor Strange closes the dimensional rift and boom! Now the day is saved. Okay, we're good now. So now that the rift is closed, of course the house just crumbles and implodes because, that's just how things work when it comes to magic in cartoons. I guess, I don't know why. So everyone's all hip and happening, everyone's feeling pretty good, so yeah, that's where our fantastic tale ends. That was actually a pretty wild and wacky kind of an episode. The whole series of the Spider-Man animated series is pretty wild and wacky as well. It's so incredibly not grounded in reality, but that was the way it was for comics in the 90s, which this comic reproduces pretty faithfully. One thing I love about Doctor Strange in this episode and in the comics is that he always has to speak the spell that he's about to cast, and it's always something pretty wild out and wacky.
I call upon the 10 rings of Boopity Boppity to give me shelter. I cast the hex of Bloopity Blapst upon thee.
Or some other kind of ridiculous thing like that. Which is a good thing that they did not do in the MCU, but still, it is just classic Doctor Strange to see this, but it is kind of more comical than it is like yowza wowza magical sorcery kind of hoopla. Or, whatever you want to call it. This was such an amazing, spectacular cartoon series of Spider-Man, and it kind of had to be because in the 90s, man, you had such stiff competition from other cartoons like for superheroes, and this one stood out like so well. And for this series to last as long as it did, you know, it was good on them. So if you haven't checked out this series yet, I highly recommend it. And other than that, let's see what else we can dig up about this stuff. Okay, so, as we all know, Spider-Man made his first appearance in 1962's classic Amazing Fantasy number 15. Lesser known, Doctor Strange made his first appearance in 1963 in Strange Tales number 110. And then after that, these two fine chaps made their first team-up appearance in Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 2 in 1965. No, which is kind of important to this episode because that episode actually draws a lot of inspiration from that comic. In both of them, you have the Wand of Watum. Some evil sorcerer is trying to steal it. In the comics case, it was a character named Xandu, and of course in this episode it was Baron Mordo, and it also featured Spider-Man going into this wild and wacky different dimension. So that is actually a nice bit of writing homage from the writers of this cartoon series. Good on them. And of course this animated series is not the first Spider-Man cartoon, nor is it the last one that's happened. Of course the first one was the classic 1967 masterpiece cartoon with the greatest theme song of possibly all time. And Lee's cartoon started in 2017 called Marvel's Spider-Man. So there has been 9 Spider-Man cartoon series in total, and most of them did pretty much have a pretty big expansion into the Marvel universe. Not just the Spider-Man universe of characters, but you did see a bunch of different characters from a bunch of different Marvel properties, and this series in 1994 was no different. Just like the MCU, Spider-Man teamed up with a lot of members from the Avengers, of course including Iron Man, War Machine, Nick Fury, Captain America, and of course like in this episode you've seen Doctor Strange and Wong. You of course had your Stan Lee appearance, and even going further out of the Avengers scope you had the X-Men, Daredevil, the Punisher, Blade. Like, this series was awesome, not just with its whole like Spider-Man universe stuff, but the entire Marvel universe that was included in this series. So of course that would bring us to comparing this series to the MCU, because we got the right. So of course you got your main protagonists, Peter Parker, Spider-Man. Of course there was Doctor Strange, who gave a bit of an exposition background to Wong, which of course, yeah, is exactly as it happened in the MCU. Famous doctor, car accident, ancient one, etc. And of course you have the ever amazing Mary Jane Watson, or MJ, however it's put. And for the villains of the episode, of course with the big one you got Dormammu in his wacky weird dimension, and you have Baron Mordo. Of course in this episode he is already a villain doing his villainy things, whereas in the MCU we first start seeing him as a loyal sorcerer to the Ancient One before he turns at the end. Of course Baron Mordo has a bunch of lackeys kind of working at him, the members of the Center of Reunification, who do the bidding of him and therefore Dormammu, which of course we did see somewhat kind of differently in the MCU, but hey man, similar things, so pretty good on being pretty consistent with all that. And I guess for that, you know, that's kind of that. We'll have to wait for the new Spider-Man movie to come out to see how many more similarities this series has with the MCU, but until then, that's that for now. Alright, right on, and there you go. So thanks for watching the video. I hope you liked it as much as I did making it. Also, feel free to check out the source material that I featured in this video. And if you want to leave a comment on anything you may have liked or things I might have missed in this, you know, feel free to do so. Or anything else, you know, just to say hi. That's cool too. And other than that, you know, have a great day. Thanks.